Once upon a time, it didn't really change the world, whether it was a Democrat or a Republican who were elected. But in recent years, this is no longer the case. The upcoming American election is what appears to be one of the most left-wing, radical tickets versus a very conservative ticket, a ticket of the people and an American first ticket that is concerned with making America prosperous and safe. But it's stopped being about the real issues and become more a game about personalities. So let's look at the impact of where this is all going. I'm joined from New York by Jacqueline, author of Supermoms, activated and political commentator. She's passionate about parental rights, the political climate in New York, the USA, and geopolitics. Jacqueline, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's great to see you. Now, we are less than 2 months from what seems like the most important and the most polarizing election. How do you see the differences in the candidates manifesting?
Well, I think you're right. This is the end game. We are at the point of no return. President Trump is, I think, the people's president. He puts people in the room. And then you have Kamala Harris, who is interchangeable. She can be any Democrat that we've had. Biden, Clinton, Adams, Mayor Adams of New York City. It does not matter. She is the system. So it is really President Trump versus the system. That is how this is shaping up.
And do you see that as being one of the main issues of the election? Because, it's not really, the issues aren't being spoken about. And here in Australia, what happens in America does affect us.
Right. So the reason why the issues on the left are not being spoken about is because they will lose based on the issues. There is a very specific reason Kamala Harris has not mentioned any of her policies, and that is because they are deadly dangerous. President Trump, on the other hand, frequently talks about his policies. Firstly, we saw what he did in 4 years, whether it was the economy or it was the Abraham Accords or it was keeping us out of any wars or it was historic employment. Then you look at what Kamala Harris has done. And by the way, she is not running on change. She is not Obama 2.0. She's been in the office for 3 years and it has been an abysmal failure by every metric. Crime is through the roof. The economy is careening off of a cliff. We have people pouring through our borders, illegal aliens. We have drug trafficking, child trafficking. We are about to be entangled in a third world war, possibly.
Now, you mentioned the words deadly and dangerous. We have now seen not one but 2 assassination attempts on President Trump's life. As someone who has been on Trump properties and been in close proximity to the president, how has this been allowed? How is it possible?
That is a great question. How has this been allowed? I saw a very funny tweet the other day. It wasn't funny. It was quite sad. And it said that the Israeli Air Force was able, or not Air Force, but Israel was able to find and detonate, radios and pagers of over 2,000 Hezbollah terrorists, but we cannot secure the president, the nominee, the Republican nominee in America. That is really mind-blowing.
It's very scary. Now, you have many Republican female friends who have worked and continue to work with President Trump. What is your response and their response when people claim that he doesn't support women?
So I was at the Republican convention in August, and I have to say the entire time it was dedicated to Gold Star families, to hostages families, to parents. The women that spoke, Kellyanne Conway, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, people that worked for Trump. These are women who support him. He gave them a chance when they couldn't even find a job in some cases. This is a father of 5. How is he not pro-woman? What is he? I mean, every policy that he champions is stuff that makes women's lives exponentially better, whether it is improving the economy, whether it is safety, whether it is championing parental rights. These are all things that help women, that help moms.
Now, you are coming to us from New York, a place that was once the sexiest city in the world of dreams and aspirations. Here in Australia, we're seeing really frightening images of pavements filled with rubbish, of crime, of homelessness, of rats. What has happened? Is that the case?
Yes, so I live in Manhattan. I live in ground zero of liberal lunacy. And what you are seeing actually is the result of one party Democrat rule. They are pro decarceration, which is basically springing criminals from prison. They are pro not arresting people, not prosecuting people. That is under the guise of social justice. They are pro drugs, which makes sense since our White House is pro open borders and the cause of all of this fentanyl coming through. We have homeless encampments everywhere. We have Islamists that have hijacked the educational complex. We are living in very scary times where really the criminals are running the asylum.
And talking of that, anti-Semitism and with the encampments has also been a major problem in Australia, especially post-October the 7th. We've seen this happening in American universities to Jewish students where they're being brutally attacked even this week. As a mother of nearly college-age children, are you worried and do you see this changing?
I am worried. I think it is going to be a very slow change. I have already made adjustments. It's unfortunate. My kids do great. They do super well, and we will not be applying to not one school that supports Islamists, not one. If that limits us, then that limits us. But I will not pay to have my children to have my children put in harm's way, gratuitously put in harm's way. And I would say this, I'm Jewish, but I would say this even if I wasn't. Really, schools are not meant to be held hostage by people that are anti-America, who are
how have
really
anti-Americans been able, and as you say, Islamists, how have they been able to fill and infiltrate American universities?
America and the West has been conquered by Islam. You saw it when Mayorkas testified before Congress. We have Islamists in all aspects of our educational complex, in our government, in our military. We are really, we have a problem. We quite frankly have a problem. And I don't see it getting better anytime soon unless Trump wins. And Trump has promised that he will withhold federal funding as part of Title VI from any schools that allow the harassment of Jews. Now, this is actually quite interesting because there are plenty of Jews. 80% of American Jews vote Democrat. They vote against their interests. But they cannot say with a straight face that the Harris Biden or even Harris-Walz ticket is pro really the Judeo-Christian ethos when they refuse to withhold funding, part of Title VI, from schools that participate in harassment of Jews. And again, it is not merely the harassment of Jews, it is the harassment of Americans, of white people, of Christians as well.
And we did actually see in 2019 with Trump's executive order back then to withhold funding from many universities before the encampments that actually didn't stop anti-Semitism and hate. Now, we've seen this week, Congressman Ted Cruz spoke at a hearing on anti-Semitism, or should I say hate. There seems to be this moral provocation where every time anti-Semitism is mentioned, the left feel the need to also talk about all hate. Here in Australia, whenever our Prime Minister seems to talk about anti-Semitism, he adds Islamophobia into the same sentence. Why do you think there is this apologist behaviour?
It is really so strange. Again, let's believe what we see. Do we see any Christians and any Jews protesting throughout America, throughout Australia, throughout the West, occupying education? Can you imagine there are over 50 Muslim majority countries? Can you imagine any Jew or Christian going to any of these 50 plus Muslim majority countries and doing this in their education, in their churches, in their places of worship? Of course not. Again, I think the reason why this is not allowed but encouraged is because we have been conquered by Islam.
Now, another issue that is very important to you is having children. Today, reports have come out that birth rates are getting lower and lower. How is it in America right now?
So there's a prediction that by 2030, 45% of women will be single and childless. This is terrifying for the following reason. A country whose people do not reproduce ends up growing stagnant and ends up growing poorer. What does that lead to? It leads to weakness. It leads to a takeover. And we are amidst that takeover right now. American birth rates are down, and people that are coming here, foreigners, their birth rates are going up.
Well, it's certainly very interesting times. Jacqueline, thank you so much for joining us. We will hopefully see you again before the election for an update about what's going on over there.
Thank you so much. I'm grateful to be here.